Welcome to the debate. Today, we are looking at the invisible machinery running our modern enterprises. And we're asking a fundamental question about the future of human labor.
Yeah, it's really the defining economic question of our moment, honestly.
Absolutely. Does artificial intelligence function primarily as, like, a beneficial co-pilot that elevates human potential and democratizes capabilities? Or does it represent a fundamental risk to workers by systematically absorbing human hours and displacing labor?
Right, because when we historically talked about workplace automation, we usually pictured physical machinery, right? We imagined the classic assembly line.
Yeah, the massive mechanical arms swinging a car door into place.
Exactly. It was loud, it was metallic, and it was distinctly separate from the human workers on the floor. You knew exactly where the machine ended and the human began. But today, the machinery isn't behind safety glass. It is entirely invisible, and it's embedded in every keystroke.
I mean, exactly. And because it's invisible, we have to look really closely at its actual impact. I'll be presenting the perspective that AI is fundamentally an empowering tool.
And I'll be taking the stance that AI at an enterprise level is primarily a mechanism deployed to shrink manual effort and adapt to workloads without driving headcount.
Right. So I look at this technology and I see something that is shifting workers away from mundane, repetitive tasks. It's freeing them for high-value strategy and creativity. By taking over the rote mechanics of operations, I really believe AI is creating an unprecedented era of democratization.
And, well, I look at this through the lens of enterprise behavior. Organizations aren't integrating these systems just to make their employees' lives more fulfilling. They are pulling a highly effective lever to compress time and reduce costs.
Okay, let's get right into the mechanics of what this actually looks like in practice. Because when I talk about AI as a digital employee or a productivity partner, I'm looking at how it fundamentally shifts what a single human being can accomplish.
Right, the scale of individual output.
Exactly. Think about a solopreneur today. Just a few years ago, running a competitive digital business required massive overhead. You needed a copywriter, a junior web developer, someone to handle invoices.
A whole team, basically.
A whole team. But today, an individual can chain together generative AI models and low-code workflow engines to automate that entire pipeline. They are operating as entire mini studios.
We're migrating human effort away from mechanical execution, like typing out the same email response 50 times a day, and elevating it toward relationship building and creative strategy. It's an unparalleled co-pilot.
I understand the appeal of that narrative. I really do. But let's look at the underlying math of what you just described.
Okay, sure.
You use the phrase democratization, which generally implies a universal lifting of all boats. But we have to ask, who loses out in this specific type of democratization?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a zero-sum game.
But you just praised the fact that a solopreneur no longer needs to hire a copywriter, a developer, or an administrative assistant. If one person, armed with an LLM, can now do the work of an entire department, the direct operational reality is that the roles comprising that department are being eliminated. I think you're looking at a static pie there, assuming demand never changes. But historically, when the cost of production drops, demand expands.
In some sectors, sure, but
Well, let me finish. Generative AI tools, whether it's text, coding, or creating hyper-realistic video scenes, they level the playing field. A small, local business can now run highly targeted marketing campaigns with production values that used to require a massive multinational corporation.
right.
They aren't firing a massive team because they never had one to begin with. They're finally able to compete.
Let me stop you right there, because the small business competing argument completely ignores what happens in the mid-market and enterprise space, and that's where the vast majority of these professionals are employed.
Okay, how so?
Let's take a medium-sized design agency. Before AI, producing a comprehensive branding package required multiple revisions, feedback loops, and a team of designers spending days mocking up variations.
Yeah, it was incredibly tedious.
Right. But now, a creative director can feed a brand narrative into an image generator and produce 50 highly polished concepts in an hour.
Which is incredible. You're giving the creative director the ability to explore conceptual spaces at a speed that was physically impossible before.
Incredible for the director, yes.
But the human is still required to set the goal, provide the context, and refine the outputs to ensure quality. It's a co-pilot.
Terrible for the 5 junior designers who used to produce those mock-ups, though. If a creative director can generate 50 concepts an hour, the agency doesn't keep all 10 designers on staff and ask them to produce 500 concepts.
I mean, they might if they take on more clients.
They keep the director, maybe one senior designer to refine the outputs, and they let the other 8 go. This isn't just a theoretical concern. Redefining who can participate in these content-driven industries inherently pushes out the traditional specialists. People who spent years honing the specific crafts of drafting, rendering, and coding.
Okay, let's pause on the idea of the junior designer or the entry-level worker being pushed out, because I see this transition very differently.
Go on.
Think of AI as the transition from drawing water from a well to having indoor plumbing. When we got indoor plumbing, we didn't just find a better bucket. We built a system where the resource flows constantly in the background.
Sure, but cognitive labor isn't water.
AI is doing the exact same thing for cognitive work. By automating the plumbing, the lead follow-ups, the initial document generation, the data entry, we shorten feedback loops. A contract can move from an idea to execution in hours instead of weeks.
But this frees human staff, including junior staff, to focus on much higher value work.
But how does someone actually achieve the ability to do that high-value work? I think we often gloss over the mechanism of skill acquisition here.
What do you mean?
We all know that entry-level feeling, staring at a messy spreadsheet at 9 p.m. trying to find a formatting error, or reading through hundreds of pages of case law to find one relevant precedent.
Yeah, it's miserable.
It is miserable. But historically, that misery, the actual mechanics of the work, was exactly how you built an intuitive sense of the data.
Oh, I don't know about that. It is. It's how an associate lawyer learned how arguments are structured. It's how a junior analyst learned to spot anomalies. If an AI writes the initial drafts of every proposal and cleans all the messy data, you are permanently shrinking the training ground.
How does a junior employee ever develop the contextual knowledge and the judgment to become that senior orchestrator if the AI has absorbed all the foundational reps?
I completely disagree that drudgery is a prerequisite for mastery. You're essentially arguing that because we learn through tedious manual labor, the next generation has to as well.
No, I'm arguing they need the reps to understand the foundation.
But look at how adaptive AI learning models actually work today. An entry-level employee doesn't have to spend 3 years formatting spreadsheets to understand market dynamics.
They still need to understand where the numbers come from. And they can. They can sit in front of an AI-powered analytics dashboard that digests raw sales data into clear insights instantly. If there's an anomaly, say Q3 sales dropped in the Midwest due to a supply chain hiccup, the AI surfaces it.
Right.
The junior employee can then start asking strategic questions about supply chain resilience on day 1. Rather than waiting 5 years to be invited to the strategy meeting, AI doesn't just do the work, it accelerates human learning.
Learning strategy without understanding the underlying mechanics often leads to a hollow kind of management, though.
I wouldn't call it hollow.
You end up with workers who can read a dashboard but don't understand how the metrics are derived, and that makes them incredibly vulnerable when the model hallucinates or the parameters shift.
Well, they can ask the AI to explain its reasoning.
And more importantly, look at how organizations actually treat this time compression. You're envisioning an enlightened company that uses the saved time to mentor its young employees.
Many do.
The economic reality is that companies view human labor as a rigid expense. When AI turns reactive, manual operations into an automated, flexible layer, executives don't say, "Great, let's use all this free time to teach our junior staff high-level strategy."
Some definitely are reskilling their workforce.
Most are saying, "Great, we can now process invoices, schedule appointments, and do first-line support 24/7 without breaks. We don't need to hire the next cohort of juniors." Labor is commodified. It becomes a premium expense that leadership will continually try to justify cutting.
I think you're underestimating how businesses compete. The strategic shift here isn't just about doing the same things cheaper. It's about moving operations from a cost center to a value center.
Okay, but how many businesses actually make that leap?
The successful ones, companies that treat AI as an embedded layer, see drastically faster time to market. Their pricing, risk scoring, and campaign allocations adapt continuously.
Right.
In that environment, the human is elevated to an orchestrator of incredibly complex systems. The frontier of AI is smarter coordination between tools, like autonomous agents that can plan, break down goals, and execute multi-step projects across different applications.
Yes, digital orchestration.
Exactly. But a human remains absolutely central to set the overarching goals, guarantee alignment with company values, and, manage the edge cases.
You keep returning to this idea of the human as the orchestrator safely in the loop, guiding the machine. And that sounds comforting when we're talking about digital spreadsheets and email drafts.
Because it's true in those domains.
But let's look beyond the screen and into the physical world. Let's talk about AI in industrial and physical systems. We aren't just talking about software anymore.
Right, robotics.
Factories are deploying AI-powered computer vision systems to inspect products for defects right on the assembly line.
And they should be. Computer vision systems operate with high-speed cameras taking thousands of frames a second.
I know, the speed is incredible.
They can compare microscopic deviations against a massive synthetic dataset of known defects. A human eye biologically cannot process that photon information at production speed.
Sure.
Catching a microfracture in a piece of machinery before it ships is a massive net benefit. It prevents waste and avoids costly, unplanned downtime.
I'm not arguing that it isn't efficient or highly accurate. I am pointing out the displacement. You describe the human as an orchestrator, safely in the loop.
They are. Someone has to manage the vision system.
But in this scenario, we aren't talking about a co-pilot helping a human inspector. We are talking about replacing human eyes on the line, and it extends to logistics and supply chains.
You mean like automated warehouses?
Exactly. Look at autonomous or semi-autonomous vehicles in warehouses, ports, and farms. They navigate, they pick, and they move goods, and they do it with minimal human oversight.
Well, they're handling the most dangerous and repetitive physical work.
These applications are tightly integrated with sensors and control systems. AI is not just analyzing data on a dashboard and making a polite suggestion to a human manager. It is directly influencing real-world machinery. It is actively replacing human hands on the steering wheel and human eyes on the factory floor.
That's a valid observation, but I think the framing of replacing misses the broader shift in how that human labor is reallocated.
Reallocated where?
Even in those physical environments, AI functions as an infrastructure layer, much like the power grid. Take predictive maintenance in the energy sector, or in smart manufacturing.
Okay.
Using sensors and machine learning models to flag equipment issues doesn't replace the mechanic. Instead of an army of technicians driving around doing routine, often unnecessary manual checks just in case something is broken, the AI tells the mechanic exactly which valve is showing unusual thermal variance and needs to be replaced today.
Right.
It shifts the human worker from a reactive firefighting mode to a proactive, highly targeted mode.
It reduces the number of mechanics required. That is the fundamental math.
It allows the existing mechanics to maintain a much larger grid safely.
If a smart city grid balances loads dynamically and predicts maintenance, you no longer need the large team. You need a fraction of them. We keep using words like efficiency and optimizing workflows.
Because that's what it is.
But in the context of the workforce, squeezing out inefficiencies is often just corporate shorthand for eliminating human beings.
I think that's an overly cynical translation of efficiency. Let's look at an area where efficiency directly benefits human beings. Think about human resources and talent acquisition.
Oh, algorithmic hiring.
When HR systems use AI to surface candidates, flag potential bias in job descriptions, or match people to internal opportunities based on their actual skills rather than their pedigree, that isn't squeezing out humans.
I disagree.
That is making the human experience of finding work fairer and more precise. It removes the massive inefficiency of a highly qualified candidate's resume getting lost in a pile just because a tired recruiter missed it.
Fairer and more precise until the AI, running quietly in the background, decides a candidate doesn't match the hidden parameters of a predictive model that no one fully understands.
The models are getting more auditable, though.
Barely. These systems are running search rankings, dynamic pricing on ride-hailing apps, fraud detection in banking. These are production systems handling billions of interactions with reliability and uptime requirements on par with core infrastructure.
Exactly, which is why humans shouldn't be doing it manually.
But they operate at a scale and speed that humans simply cannot audit in real time. How does a human orchestrate an algorithm making 10,000 pricing decisions a second?
You audit the parameters, not every single decision.
They don't orchestrate it. The orchestrator you envision is often just a spectator watching a dashboard, fundamentally detached from the granular decisions the AI is making millisecond by millisecond.
But wait, that detachment from the granular millisecond decisions is exactly what allows the human to scale their impact.
By doing less actual work?
You don't need to know how the engine injects fuel to drive the car to your destination. As we move toward new multimodal interfaces, systems that fluidly combine text, images, voice, and real-time sensor context, these tools will feel less like software and more like highly capable collaborators embedded in our everyday life.
Collaborators that work for free.
We are redefining the boundaries of what one person, one team, or one organization can reasonably accomplish.
And my argument remains that when one person can accomplish the work of 50, the economic system we currently inhabit will not magically find new, high-value, well-paying work for the other 49.
New industries are always created by new technologies.
In the long run, maybe, but in the short run, it will systematically discard them as an eliminated cost.
Well, we have covered substantial ground today. To summarize my perspective, I look at the capabilities of these tools and I see a technology that fundamentally compresses decision cycles and automates the mundane.
Right.
By turning multi-step workflows over to AI assistants, we are creating an unparalleled co-pilot for human ingenuity. It levels the playing field for small businesses, allowing them to compete with deep-pocketed multinationals. And most importantly, it shifts the human workforce away from repetitive drudgery, freeing us to focus on creative, strategic, and high-value endeavors where human judgment is truly irreplaceable.
And to summarize my position, the explicit ability of AI to scale operations without scaling headcount presents an undeniable structural risk to the human workforce. When organizations deploy AI to parse data, generate finished content, and run physical machinery with minimal human oversight 24/7, they are systematically shrinking the need for human labor. They are permanently removing the entry-level training ground that workers rely on to build skills, and they're turning human employment into a rigid expense to be engineered out of the system.
Despite our stark disagreement on the ultimate impact on labor, there is, I think, a clear point of convergence between us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We both acknowledge that AI is no longer a futuristic experiment or a novelty. It is a production-grade infrastructure handling millions of real-world interactions today.
Exactly. Organizations that fail to integrate AI into their workflows are not just missing out on a marginal efficiency gain. They are actively being outcompeted by those that treat AI as a core operational layer. Adapting to this invisible machinery is no longer optional.
Which leaves us with the incredibly complex challenge of how society will navigate this transition. We are completely rewiring how value is created and how human time is spent.
Yeah, it's a profound shift.
It requires deliberate choices about how we orchestrate these tools to solve real problems without losing the human element in the process.
It demands that we think critically about the economic structures we are building, and whether the gains of this massive productivity multiplier will be shared or if they will simply pool at the very top.
We invite you, our listeners, to consider your own stance on this. Think about the changing boundaries of human and machine collaboration in your own industry, in your own daily workflows.
Yep.
As we reflect on where we started, the image of the physical assembly line locked safely behind safety glass, we have to ask ourselves, now that the machinery is entirely invisible and embedded in every keystroke, are we the ones driving the machine, or is the machine quietly driving us?